Greedy stepmom stole my inheritance and my house, so I destroy her career and life. Hello Reddit eyes plus. I never knew my mother. She died giving birth to me, so all I have are old photographs and stories my dad told me. From what I hear, she was beautiful, inside and out. My dad often said she was the kind of woman who could light up a room just by walking into it. And I believe him. He was a good man, and he raised me on his own with the help of my aunt until I was about 11. My aunt had her own kids, a bit older than me, but we grew up like siblings, and that bond has lasted all these years. My aunt, much like my mom, is a good woman, a real rock for our family. My dad was a hard-working man, running his own convenience store. He'd put in insane hours practically living in that store. I remember being a kid, hanging out after school, sweeping floors, stocking shelves just to spend time with him. For a while, he had a Chinese guy helping out. But when that guy left to take care of his ailing parents in China, my dad had to replace him. First, there was a white guy who was okay, but he eventually graduated and moved on. Then, my dad hired a Chinese woman to help out. She was younger than my dad, only 15 years older than me, but she was pretty, and I could tell my dad was smitten. Her name wasn't Barbara, but that's what I'll call her. Barbara was 26 when she started working at the store, while my dad was 44. She didn't speak the local Chinese dialect at first, which made things tricky since most of our customers were Chinese, but she was nice enough, and I thought she was all right. They got married when I was 12, and she moved in with us. Her family back in China was pretty well off, and they paid for a fancy wedding. My dad, being the proud man he was, kept working like a dog, never letting anyone else foot the bill for anything. But something changed after the wedding. Barbara wasn't the friendly big sis she pretended to be when they were dating. She became strict, almost controlling, especially toward me. She didn't want me helping out at the store anymore and started to keep me away from my dad. It wasn't like Cinderella, where the stepmom made the kid do all the work. Instead, she isolated me, cutting me off from the only parent I had left. As the years went by, Barbara convinced my dad to sponsor her relatives and friends to come over from China. My dad, despite not being rich, was brilliant with money. He helped these people set up restaurants, dry cleaners, and cell phone repair shops, every small-town foreign business you could think of. But when I was 17, my dad was diagnosed with lung cancer. 2 years later, at just 52, he was gone. I had always dreamed of taking over my dad's store, but Barbara had other plans. She had one of her cousins take over, and suddenly, the store my dad built was no longer part of my life. Barbara had also convinced my dad to change his will, leaving her almost everything. I didn't care about the money. What hurt was that the woman who had taken my dad from me now had control of his legacy. She threw me out of the house on my 18th birthday saying, "This is not a place for you. You go now. Bye-bye." She didn't waste time moving her new boyfriend, a fat scumbag from Taiwan, into the house my dad worked so hard to pay off. Life went on. I moved in with my aunt, went to junior college, and got a job at a computer store. I met a girl, Kay, who was studying to be a nurse. Things were looking up, but Barbara was still a thorn in my side. She'd used my dad's money to invest in apartment buildings, which she turned into bordellos, renting out rooms to traffickers. I learned all this later, of course, but it didn't surprise me. Barbara was beautiful and manipulative, able to wrap men around her finger with just a look. One day, I met Kay's older brother, Mike. He was a tough guy, covered in tattoos, fresh out of prison and working in landscaping. He was what we called a cowboy in our neighborhood. After I mentioned Barbara's name in passing, Mike's ears perked up. He asked me to repeat her name, and when I did, he let out a laugh and said, "Oh, I'm f***ing your stepmom." My jaw dropped. No way. But Mike wasn't joking. He told me that he regularly hooked up with Barbara while her Taiwanese boyfriend was off playing mahjong. She wanted a baby, and according to Mike, her boyfriend's sperm was too slow, so she was using him to get pregnant. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but then Mike told me something even more interesting. Barbara was running for a seat on the city council, hoping to build her little empire. Kay and I hatched a plan to bring Barbara down. Mike agreed to help, saying he'd do anything for his sister. He set up a hidden camera in Barbara's room during one of their encounters, capturing not just their affair, but also Barbara doing drugs. We edited the video down to a 10-second clip, just enough to destroy her reputation. A week later, Barbara was making a speech at a local hotel, pitching herself as a hard-working immigrant woman who had set up successful businesses in the area. The room was dark, except for the stage. I sat in the front row, a bazooka Bluetooth speaker in my backpack. As Barbara began her speech, I projected the video onto the wall behind her, the audio blasting loud and clear. The room went silent as Barbara's voice filled the space, bragging about her drugs and denouncing her Taiwanese boyfriend as a weakling. Then, there was the unmistakable sound of her moaning Mike's name. The crowd erupted in chaos. I grabbed my speaker and projector, slipped out the side door, and met Kay in the car. But not before I shouted, "This is not a place for you, Barbara. You go now. Bye-bye." Barbara's life was ruined. Her bid for city council was over, her bordello apartments were shut down, and her relatives' businesses started to fail. As for me, I moved in with Kay and got engaged. Barbara's shame echoed throughout the community, and my dad's old house fell into foreclosure. A nice white family lives there now, the only ones on the block. Barbara's scandalous video made the rounds on social media before getting taken down, but the damage was done. My dad might not have left me much money, but he taught me to be strong, to stand up for myself. And that's the best inheritance of all.